Next, let's look at another important thing that we can do with in programs, that is reading and writing files. Now, when you want to deal with files, the very first thing we need to do is to create a file object. For that purpose, we use a built-in function, open. So that is needed to access the file. So we need a file object. So that will be like a reference to a file so that we can actually access the file to do any activity for reading and writing purposes, right? So after the open function is used for that, like that, using that file object that we have referenced now can be used. So we basically, here is a occasion where we use the object-oriented features of the Python language. So we have now access to file object, and under file, file object, that object's own what we call file method or functions that basically that we can perform operations on that file can be called to do various read, write, and other operations, right? So here's what we mean by file method. So for example, if the name of the file object is file, so we say file.read. So in object-oriented terminology, so we say read method of the file object, right? So that's how we read it. And for file reading purposes, this is how we call the read method, file object. So in the open function, we would have received reference to this object, and its name here is something like this file, right? So file, that our name of that object dot read. And there's an optional argument here. So when you have a square bracket, something like this in a function description like this, this basically means size is an optional argument for this file read method. That indicates the amount of data to be read. Actually can be simply skipped or empty. It's not specified. In that case, the file content, the whole file content will be read. And we will see an example of how to use it shortly. Then the write method. If you want to write to a file, so the string that you want to write, so it's whatever you want to write is basically indicated by the string which is given as the argument, and the write method can be called file.write. And once you are done with your read-write operations, right, whatever operations, sometimes it may be read, sometimes write, or you may be doing both. At the end, we must close the file. So for that, we use the close method. And there are many file attributes that may be accessed by the program. And if necessary, we can refer to them and get the values, for example. For example, file.close. So these are attributes or values, right? While these are methods which we call to get some work done, these are attributes or fields or values that are associated with this particular object. For example, file.closed indicate whether the file is closed or not. And file.name indicates the name of the file. Mode, there's something called a mode of a file. Once you open it, opened in a particular mode, and so on and so forth. Right? So those attributes can also be accessed. Right. There are many other file methods are there, and these methods are based on the C language standard input-output package. So you might be wondering, what is C language doing here? Yes, many of the things. So Python is a modern language. It was invented not very long ago compared to some other languages like C. So C language has evolved in various different ways. which has been the foundation for many other programming languages, language implementation. So Python is also at the lowest level implemented using some of the C language infrastructure. So some of these things are basically based like that, right? And let's look at these functions one by one now. So here's the open function description. So how you use it, say open, and within brackets you can have a number of arguments. Some are optional, but you must have the name of the file. You must have it, but after that you can optionally have a mode and another one called buffering, right? So name, of course, is the name of the file to be opened. Now, so what are files? So basically that is how users as well as the programs running on a computer see or abstract the way the storage works. So anything that you store on the disk is the unit of storage is basically based on the concept of file. So you store things in files basically on the disk, right? So and disk is arranged in various different ways, depending basically how operating system is managing it. But basically, whatever operating system, the file will have a name, right? And it also has a directory structure or folder structure. It's like a tree structure from kind of hierarchical way. So name can include the path of the directory path also, that you can locate it exactly, right? So as a part of name, if you specify the absolute part of the name, then that's one way of locating that. Or else you just give the name, then it is assumed that you are referring to a file in the current directory where this program is executed from, right? Then the open function will have to find for a file that name in the current directory. Otherwise, you can give the path also as a part of the name. So the directory structure from the beginning to the end, and then the file name, right? And the mode indicates it's a string. It describes how the file is to be opened. So example modes include R, the letter just R, indicates with quotation for reading purposes. If you're opening the file for reading, then you indicate R. If it is you want to write the file, then it's W. And if you want to do appending, means basically adding at the end, while you may be also doing reading also, you can use A. If you don't include it, then assume it is R, which is the default. And in addition to that read, write, append kind of a letter, RWA, there can be a letter B to indicate that it is to be opened in binary mode. That's another way. So because another way might be the text mode and so forth, right? So we can, if you want to do multiple things, you can say R plus, W plus, A plus like that for to do multiple things, reading and writing. So this is basically only a brief summary of this. You probably might want to read more on these notes, more detail. Now here is a good place for you to read about this Stack Overflow discussion about various different file modes, right? Or else you can obviously look at the manual Python documentation for these modes, file modes. Now here's one example. Example is program 2.4 in the notes. Here, so there are, you can see the green color lines are the comments that describes various things that we do. The first of all is including the program name also. So here's the first line of code, actual code, F4 equals open this thing. So How does this work? Now here we have given the name of a file, pythonlearn.txt, and that's the name, and it's to be opened in the R, read mode. So we have asked open function to open this particular file for reading purpose. This R means that, right? And what is F4? Here F4, so open file, if it is successful, will return a reference to a file object, and which basically F4 is now will basically be that file object. So that reference will be captured by F4, and after that point, after this point onwards, we can access, refer to that file or access that file using this file object F4. So that's what indeed what you can see here. Next line, here you can see, here we say F4.read. So that F4 is what basically we need. Right? So F4.read. So here, simply, very simple, one particular statement here, we have called the read method of the file object F4 to read that file content. And then this, we have written it like S equals F4.read method, right? So the read method of the file object F4 will read the contents of the file, and it will basically whatever read has been will be kept in memory somewhere, and its reference is returned to S. So S will basically get access to the contents of the file now in memory as a result of this read operation. So in the next line, we are basically displaying that using the print function, what we read from that file. So this displays first this string, read string is colon. After that, you can see the value of S. S is basically this particular S. So this is S is actually a string, because we have read this file, we have opened this file for read purpose, and the read method will return the file contents, and the file contents now, after having read from the file, will be in the memory, and S now refers to that, and this statement is displaying that value, that string S, after displaying this read string is colon, after that S will be displayed. So then it will be closed. So file close, because any file that you open has to be closed at the end after everything is over. That's the standard thing that you should do. So always remember to do that. Any file you open, after you perform the operation at the end, close them, right? Right, so now something interesting here. Now you can see how simple to read from a file using Python. Now, a C programmer writing a C program to read the file contents like this will never write it like this. It will not be that simple. Now here we just 4 lines of code, right? If you just forget about the comments, so this is line number 1, this is line number 2, and this is line number 3, and this is line number 4. Right? Just 4 lines of code to read the contents of file and display it on screen. Just 4 lines of code. If you have to write a C program for this, you realize that you will take several lines of code even just to read the contents of the file. It's not so easy like this. This is one single, just read, call into the read function. That's it. Why we cannot do it in a C program that easily? Because one is that the memory, where are we going to read, and where are we going to store what we read from the file? So in a C program, the earlier also mentioned that you have to do specific memory management things have to be managed by the programmer. Now in Python, you don't have to worry. Here, what if this file is a huge file, right? If this Python learn.txt, if it's a 2 megabyte file, let's say, it's not huge, but let's say 2 megabyte, still doesn't matter. This f4.read will work correctly without any problem as long as we have enough memory in the computer. Because it's a matter of reading the content of the Python learn.txt from the disk and keeping it in the memory. If you have enough space in memory to keep that, no problem. It will work. And the Python will take care of the memory requirements, and because automatic memory management will be done on behalf of the programmer. The programmer doesn't have to worry. But in a C program, the programmer will first allocate some amount of memory within the program as like an array or something. And usually the C programmers will try to efficiently use memory. It will not allocate a huge amount of memory also. So the C programmer will probably plan to read the file in chunks, right? Let's say if it is whatever the size, you cannot make various assumptions. Maybe assuming that it can be even big, C programmer, let's say, would read chunk by chunk at a time, let's say 100 bytes, or just for example, right? If you say in one instance, it reads 100 bytes. And here, if the objective is basically to read the file contents and display on screen, this process will be done in a loop in the C program, right? And inside the loop, what it will do is, okay, read the next 100 bytes into the memory which is allocated by the programmer, and display the contents on the screen, and then go back to the loop, beginning part of the loop, and read the next 100 bytes and display that one, and continue to do like that. So that's a typical way a C program would work to get the same kind of result here. Because you will not generally have programmer would not allocate a huge amount of memory to make it possible to read the whole file contents at once, because we don't know the actual size of the file, right? So, whereas Python programmer has not been worried about this at all. It doesn't matter to the Python programmer. The Python programmer assumes in this case that there is enough memory to read the whole content of the Python learn.txt file and written it that way. But there is some problem actually at the runtime. If, for example, this file is so big and there's not enough memory in the system to read everything in the file into the memory, then there'll be a runtime problem and some situation will arise. Maybe not everything will not be like normally executed. There'll be some particular error, or we call it exception, can occur. Right? Okay, that's basically example file operation, reading a file. So this program was basically doing that. All right, let's go to another example. This is program 2.5 from the notes. And here, in this particular example, we are opening a file, right? So you can see here, open, like before. F4 is going to be the name of the file object in this program. We use the open function, and here's the name of the file, and we are opening it for writing. W indicates that, right? And because of that, you can call this write method of the file object, right? Now, in the previous case, we perform the read operation, or we call the read method of the file object. We opened the file mode was read, right? So this is this read thing here in R indicates reading, and we perform the read. In this example, we open the file for writing and call the write method. Now you can actually try yourself by, let's say, here instead of W, you say read R and still call write method here and see what happens. Right? So let's try it. Now, okay, let's see how it works. So similar to the previous occasion, now after if the open function is successful, you get access to the file using this file object. And next time you simply say f4.write, that's calling the write method of that file object to write. This is the content you want to write to the file. Python is one, two exclamation marks, finally ending with new line character. This is what we basically have. We want to write to that file. Now there's a semicolon here, which actually need not be there. We have mentioned earlier also. End of a Python statement, you may have a semicolon, it doesn't really matter. Even without that, it will work, right? Now, okay, a little bit about this opening a file for writing. What if you already have a file in this name? Then when you open a file and we give an existing file name to open for writing purpose, because we are opening it for writing, the contents, any existing content in that file will be lost when you write, because it will be overwritten, right? Anything that would have existed contained in that file will be lost when you open it for writing and write something in it. Actually, if you want to keep the contents of the file and just add to the file from the point to from the last point onwards, you should open the file for append. Right? If you open the file for appending with the letter A here, then when you write this, basically the current content of the file will be kept. It will not get lost. It will not get overwritten. You simply write whatever here inside the write method, what you include here will be written at the end of the file. So a file can be visualized like a sequence of things. Starting, there's a starting point, and as we write, we can keep adding to the file. Right? So for that, you have to open the file in append mode. Now, if there is no such file already, then a new file will be created with this name, and whatever we write will be written inside, and the file will be saved on disk, right? So even if the file existed, the new things will be written or overwriting the previous things, so previous things will get lost, and the file will be still saved with the new content, right? That's how it works. Now, so if there is no such file with this name, there's no harm, it will be created because you are opening the file for writing. Now, in the previous example, if there is no such file in the system, now here its assumption is that the program is being executed, let's say from within a particular directory. This particular file name will be searched within the current directory. And if there is no such file found, then there will be an exception, that means an error situation, right? So the program will terminate after displaying some error message if a file cannot be found. Because in order to read from a file, that file must exist. Whereas in the case of writing, if there is no such file, no harm, you simply create it because it's opening the file for writing. And after performing whatever the write that you want to do, finally you have to close. So as earlier mentioned, always remember to close the file that you opened, right? And with that, we end the part 4 of this lecture number 2.